Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in and welcome again to Test Automation Forum's Showcase series, where we showcase your popular automation tools and platforms in order to help you to simplify your automation journey. I hope everyone is safe and doing well. Coming to today's showcase session, we are going to talk about another interesting automation tool called Sahi Pro, which simplifies your automation problems through simple record and playback mechanism. Sahi Pro, it has been there in the market for a while now. When it came in 2005, it came as an open source platform. Afterwards, it became Sahi Pro and was offered as a commercial testing platform. And now it's in the version of 9X, I believe, in the market. We'll talk more about its features and capabilities in the discussion. We have Narayan Raman, who is the CEO of Sahi Pro, and we also have Prateek Shah, who will take us through the product capabilities, and they will also talk about their experience, their journey so far as part of this products development and commercializing, offering it to the global customers and so on. So without further ado, let's get started. Narayan, Prateek, thank you so much for joining me today. And we are going to talk about Sahi Pro. Very excited. Narayan, it's a great honor to have you in the session today. So it would be great if you can just have a quick intro about yourself and tell us a little bit about your responsibilities at Sahi Pro. I think that would be a good point to start with this discussion.
Thank you very much, Trivikram, for having us here. Thank you very much. My name is Narayan. I have been working in the industry since 2000. I have been a developer most of my life. In around 2005, I used to work at ThoughtWorks at that time, the same place where Selenium came from. Okay, and we were looking at like having a test automation tool for our own project. We were like experimenting with Agile to have something run with our continuous integration. Our development code was already having unit tests and other things that we were running with what was called cruise control at that time. That was the precursor to Jenkins, not precursor basically, but like that was an in-house tool from ThoughtWorks. So in that, when we started out, Ant was the main build tool, and we wanted some automation for our web application. And when we looked at the tools that were available, at that time, we had Silk and Selenium that were around, which were used by our teams. And we realized that Silk, we were looking for an alternative for because it was a little slow and clunky. And it was taking a lot of time for the testers to actually come up with these cases. And when we looked at Selenium, at that time, like what happened was that particular application had something called a frame breaking code or frame busting code, which meant that, like if you actually started your application inside an iframe, that it'll break the iframe and come out. So Selenium at that time had the iframe based way of actually execution. And when I looked at it, I realized that this is not going to work. And then I had some background in proxies and JavaScript parsers, etc., from the previous 5 years that I'd been working in the industry. And so I started writing a open source tool called Sahi. It was a proxy injection based mechanism to inject some JavaScript into the browser. And depending on the different browsers, I wrote a simulation code for recreating actions like click and these things for the different browsers. And that also because we wanted something quick for all our automation, I also wrote a recorder for that. And at that time, the way Agile and everything was going, recorders were not like the nice things to have. People say that, no, we should code. But the point was, having a recorder was a big deal for our testers to actually adopt the tool. And the thing is, the reason recorders were not working too well till that time was because either it was using XY coordinate based stuff, or it was tying itself too much to the HTML structure of the page. Okay, so based on that, when I looked at it, I saw that, hey, I don't need to actually tie it down to the HTML structure too much. I should not at all be going the XY coordinate path, because, you resize the browser and you take it out of focus, make it bigger on a bigger screen, etc. It'll fail. So for that, we wrote functions around the DOM to be able to say, okay, use the visual elements of the UI to be able to find an element. Okay, so for example, almost everything that you have on the UI, right, has something unique and specific so that it doesn't look confusing to the end user. So you wouldn't have like too many buttons which say submit if unless they all mean the same thing. Okay, so you wouldn't have like 3 login buttons unless they meant the same thing. Okay, or you will disambiguate it for the user by saying something else, login as user or login as admin, etc. So there were these things, and then there were if there was a form element that need to be submitted, you would have a name attribute to that element. So there were some logic and some method to the overall madness of how you could actually identify different elements on the browser. Okay, and we latched on to only these properties and made it configurable. For example, like if there was a button, you could actually look at the text, and then you could go on to something else like a CSS selector, or you could go on to its ID, and there was a hierarchy to like which had more precedence over the other, and you could configure this also. So this was like the initial Sahi. We launched it, and like it was a fairly popular project at that time. Till 2008, like we were the 3 Selenium, Water, and Sahi were like the 3 ones which were actually used quite a bit. We came to about 26th rank in like hundreds of thousands of projects in SourceForge. So it was a fairly popular project. But what we realized was the browsers were actually evolving very fast. This was all for the browsers that we actually initially did. And it was evolving very fast, and it was not easy to actually keep maintaining that by ourselves, which even the Selenium people faced a lot, because like even now you can hear the rants that hey, like we have 4 people, like we have to struggle too much, etc. So the thing was, and another thing with being an open source project in the test space, right, is that you will have a lot of people who will use it, but not enough people who will be able to contribute back, because they're not programmers, they're testers essentially. And especially a tool which is geared towards testers who need not necessarily program, right, it kind of like makes it, you can't get too much contributions from them as product. So that is where it was going. And then we said, okay, you know what, there are a lot of users and companies which are actually like looking for a solution like this, and we spoke to a bunch of our users like who are using it, and they say like, hey, we will be fine with paying for this product. Okay, so then I started this company called it's called Taito Software, but Sahi Pro is our main product. Okay, and this product, like we had like paying customers from day one, and like we kind of like built a bunch of like enterprisey features for them for distributed playback across multiple machines, and then collation of reports, etc. So these things we worked on, and that is in 2009 we started the web part. But browsers have been like evolving super fast. Okay, and like in the last okay, it has kind of like subsided in the last 4-5 years, because all of them have kind of converged. People gave up. Like previously there were different engines for like different engines for Firefox, different engines for Safari, Chrome, etc. But then like Chrome and Safari and Chrome kind of picked up from WebKit, and then like I also said, we'll latch on to the WebKit based that engine, and then like they also use the same thing now. Only Firefox has a slightly different engine now. So, but overall, like things have kind of like narrowed down to a stable set of things. But previously, in the like 2010 to 2015, there was so much difference between these browsers, and like we had this whole platform which could equalize between a click on that and a click on this, etc. So so that had been happening. Okay, so when we started working on the browser for different we kept working on the browsers, and then like what we realized was, okay, record and playback, and like simple, we were depending on scripting. When you record and playback, you get JavaScript based scripts, and we were we were saying that, okay, you can actually extract out functions like this, parameterize it, and this is how you would do it. But what we realized was, even that can be a little bit of a struggle for a business tester. Okay, a business tester, for example, like our tool is used in a variety of domains. Okay, so we get used in healthcare, like in insurance, banking, automotive industry, energy, student and education, etc. So the thing is, the end user, he doesn't care about the HTML structure or these things. Okay, they understand the business logic, and they can figure out whether this is working correctly or not correctly. So we wanted to be able to talk in their language, to be able to enable them to write tests and be able to maintain. Okay, it wasn't an easy task, because like a lot of it that we produce is actually scripts, but what we want to expose to them is the English like language, Excel like user interface, etc. So then we started working on that to see, okay, hey, we have to give a simpler user interface that the business users can like pick and use. And during that time, another thing that happened was, from browsers, like people were moving to mobile a lot, right? So we built mobile engines so that the automation can happen on Android and iOS also. Then we another thing we realized was a lot of people who are using the web were like kind of saying, hey, if there was a desktop automation tool, right? And people would say, if you actually like went out in the industry, said like we have desktop automation, a lot of people would ask, who uses desktop applications anymore? But the truth is, the industry is rife with like so many applications that are built on the desktop, like it, and especially like these business domain specific businesses, right? So they have a lot of software that is built on desktops and other things. So they needed like something that would do something on the browser, then would go into the desktop application to do something, then come back via HTTP REST API to figure out whether things are working, a bunch of things like that. So we needed something that worked across these things. And so the desktop automation bit was the next thing that we actually worked on. And overall, if we look at our usage in our customer base, web is the first, then desktop, then mobile. Okay, so it is like that. And the in desktop there are like myriad things, right? Like you have all the Windows based technologies, then you have the Java technologies, then you have SAP GUI like things. So we initially worked on the Java bits because like we are familiar with it, and then we went on to do Windows automation bit. So we support even old applets and JNLP based, WebStart based applications, etc. So there's a lot of like stuff that we can support now. And then we realized that hey, there is still a limit to where we can go with all this. Okay, so there were things like on the desktop UI also, some things would be like identifiable, some things wouldn't be. Then we figured that we need to have optical recognition based, either an image based thing or a OCR based thing, or like a mix and match both of them. So we have like OCR engine and like image recognition based identification also, but we normally use it only for fallback. Okay, when the other things don't work, we actually use it as a fallback. Now, because we have engines that are built into the system for each one of them, right, the playback actually runs very fast, and also it many times doesn't need the thing to be in focus. Okay, so that kind of like with browsers, if you see our browser automation running, you will see like in parallel like 5-6 instances on the browser, like opening, closing, and executing stuff. So it works like that. So those are the things that that is how our journey has been. And the last thing we actually released was something called BDTA. Okay, which means business driven test automation. Okay, this is not really BDD because like nobody is using these to actually drive the domain business itself. Okay, it's not the development of the application that is driven with that, but the test automation is driven via the business. Okay, so via the business cases. So that is what like we wanted to actually come down to. So that's our last thing. Now we are writing working on another thing which is kind of stealth right now, maybe like in a month or two, like, or maybe 2-3 months, like we'll come out with that. So that is another angle to the automation problem. But so far, like till BDTA, Sahi Pro actually has that. Okay, so that has been our journey. Okay, 2009 is when we started the company, or like we have about 500 450 plus customers right now, and they are in like various domains. Okay, and interestingly, like I don't know how much you have heard about Sahi Pro, but like it's not the most popular tool out there. Like you don't hear it so much, but still like we have inroads into so many companies, so many big companies, because like it's been the last resort. Hey, nothing is working. Will this work? It works. Yes, it works for us. Okay, so like they have actually been able to use that. So that's been, and we work very closely with the customer. So like we kind of one of the things that gets talked about a lot about us is like we have excellent support. We actually have very empathetic support. We look at their application, do online meetings, figure out what is going wrong, tell them how to fix it, etc. So it's a good amount of hand holding and expertise in the technology that helps us like, make the customer actually get their automation right. So that's kind of the journey. Okay, so that was a long one. Sorry about that.
No, that's absolutely great story, Narayan. I remember when I came to actually QA space way back in 2003, 2004, when automation, people started considering automation as a kind of subject matter in QA process. I think most of the tools, I think there were not many of them, one or two maybe, Windrunner by Mercury.
QTP is there. So yeah.
Exactly. So those tools were all like recording and playback kind of tools. There was no programmability, no scripting. All those things came later maybe.
Correct.
So the story that you just explained, that reminds me that you have gone through those multi-generation evolutions
Yes.
of your tool, and sounds like, and you are talking about your business-driven test automation. I think that is more focused around business process and model-based kind of testing process, which perfectly makes sense. So it's a great story, Narayan. Thank you so much for taking us through your journey. And coming to today, if we look at the industry, everybody is going codeless, though there are good amount of people with Selenium or programming skill set. We have also seen in last couple of years when digital transformation actually was accelerated, we could see new positions like SDETs and so on. But we see a lot of shift from programming to codeless, kind of adoption in the platforms. So what you see Sahi Pro is doing about that? Are you also kind of, bringing those kind of, features into your platform?
Yes. So the thing is, like, that's what I was telling you about, right? There's another it's another product that we're launching, okay, which will be fairly codeless, okay. The thing is, if you see, people write a lot of code to even accomplish that click and the set value in the fields, etc. That layer has like definitely been like quite well solved right now. Okay, there are tools which still struggle with them, but there are a lot of tools which actually solve that well. Okay, you could use like tools like Sahi Pro which actually do that well, or like there are other AI based image processing tools also that actually like do a fair job. Okay, now what we have seen is like when we did PDTA and other things also, right? The layers on top of it, you could see that they all fall into place. Like there are like specific patterns in which all of this falls. Okay, so it is possible to actually extract out these in a non-code based interface that end users can actually interact with and have a fairly low code, no code solution for that. Of course, you will need to descend at some point to the code, like if as a like say it's an add-on or a plugin, but otherwise you need not go into it for like 85-90% of the times or even more, right? So I do see that it is possible. I was a skeptic about low code before, but that was more because like people were just like doing low code for saying hey, instead of okay, in Sahi syntax it would be underscore click underscore button and then like some text. Okay, they would say, hey, this is like this is code, but I'll write this click space button space this identifier, and that is not code. That is like that's just like semantics of like what you call code and what you don't call. What happens when you actually like bunch of these things and call it a login function? How do you actually make that login function? Is it a function or is it something else? How do you actually expose that to the end user such that you have the same kinds of parameterization and a module that you actually call, but is it exposed to you as a function, or is it exposed to you as something hidden or like in some other way? So there are ways of like presenting it. You could choose either of them. Like you could say, I want more control, I'll go to the function. I'll say, no, I don't want to like see the code at all, let me go to this function. So it's either way, like you could so a low code can be done. Like if you actually build the correct kind of abstractions, it is possible to actually do low code. So yeah,
super. And one more thing about your platform capability, or one of the features that we see, people are talking about auto healing capability, right? So what you have to say about auto healing? Is it available today, or you have something?
Yeah, so auto heal has been available for about like 2.5 years now with us. Okay, so there are see, the way we do it is like this. There are different ways of doing auto healing. Okay, one is to say that hey, I will only understand the text of it, let's say login, and then I will figure out like what else can be like login and look for elements in that. Okay, but what we do is this: if you turn auto healing on, it will keep like so we only identify the element by one of its visual elements. Okay, but what we do is when we play back, right, we capture all like all significant I told you about a hierarchy of different attributes by which we identify elements, right? We capture all those attributes and then store it. Okay, the next time we play and we see that for that element is not found by that name, we look for the last time what were the other things that this could be, like what were the other attributes of this element, and we see if anything else matches what is there right now, and we do some like a fuzzy match of okay, how much percent of it matches, etc. And then okay, then choose that element and then go ahead if it is found, and then we log it in the log saying that hey, an alternate element was found, this was not found, this is what it was, this is what it is, and if you want to change the script, go ahead and change it. So that's what it does. Yeah.
That sounds really interesting, Narayan. Thank you very much for taking us through your product's capabilities and some of the features. That is very helpful to this discussion. All right. So I think it's time to have a look at the tool, the look and feel, how to get started using the tool. So Pratik, would you like to take us through, the tool overview and tell us something about how we can initially set up on our system to, get started with Sahi Pro?
Sure, thank you. So I'll start sharing my screen. Okay, so you can install the Java files. So I'll start off with the introduction of the product. So as you might be aware of that, Sahi Pro is a functional automation testing tool, which can automate the web applications, desktop applications, mobile application, and SAP GUI based applications. Okay, so in this demo, I'll quickly show you how easily you can automate the web applications. Okay, and with the BDTA, you don't need to have your applications ready. The application under test need not to be ready to be able to start your automation. You can well before you can start writing your business logic when it is in conceptualization phase. Okay, so once you install the product, you will have an icon on your desktop. You double click on it, you'll see the dashboard like this. It will have all the browsers which you have installed on your system. Okay, so now we'll click on the editor, which will bring the UI where you can write your business logic. So this is what we call as editor. Okay, so here there is a space where you can click on new and create the scenario. So in this demo, we'll show you how BDTA helps you to write the business logic, and then when application is ready, you can basically automate it. Okay, so assuming that we would be creating a e-card kind of an application which is not ready, but the the normal e-card kind of application would have login, add books, adding some fields, and then verifying the total and log out, right? So that is the typical business e-card application would look like. So I'll start off with let's say login to app, or maybe we can have TAF login. Okay, so then ideally the login would happen with some username. As the business application is not ready, you may or may not have the test data ready, so you can keep it blank. Now after the login, we would say we want to add some books. Okay, so add books to cart, and if you know how many books you would be having, you can write upfront, or else you can keep it blank. So we would be assuming that we will have Java and Ruby, and we'll keep it like this. So after adding some books, we want to verify that the total of the books. So I'm going to write it as verify total with the total. So Java Ruby would act as an input argument, and then total would be the verification point, which is output parameters. Okay, once everything is done, we are going to log out. So let me save the file as tf books cart. Okay, so it will create a tf folder. Inside that, it will create the books cart scenario file. You can also have given the test case ID, if you have manual test case written, so you can corresponding tag them and have some valid description of the test case. So this is my add books and verify total. Okay, now assuming that your application is ready and it can be automated now, so you will do right click and say run/record. So it will open up the playback properties, wherein you can specify on which browser you want to record, or the same thing would works across the different platforms like browser, desktop. So here you can choose which one to record on, and if it's a browser, on which browser you want to record. Okay, and here you have to specify the application under test. So we are going to test out our training website. So I'm going to specify the training URL and click on run/record. So what it will do is it will open up the browser and navigate to the URL which you have specified, and then it will open up the controller for you to record the actions. Okay, so here is our controller. I'll resize and make it side by side so that we can see both the screen at the same time. Okay.
Yep.
So essentially, first you have to write the script name where all your actions will be recorded. So it prompts saying that enter a script name. I'll click on OK and save it in the same folder as our scripts are. Okay, so I'm going to use it as TF and then functions lib Okay, now the first section which we have written in our flow was to record the login. Okay, so this is the keyword and click on start recording. So you have to perform the actions which are required for the login feature to complete. So for me to be able to log in, I have to enter the username, I have to enter the password and click on login. So here my login feature is completed. So I'm going to stop the script. So you can see that all the actions which I have performed on the browser has been recorded, and the test data is also added in the statement itself. So in this below portion, you can basically extract the information. So I want to extract this test as a username. So username has been picked from the file, and the password as password. Okay, so you can see that it has automatically parameterized our function, and I'll click on save. Okay, so the TA login has been done. So next in line was to add the books to the cart, right? And while design phase, we thought that we would have only Java and Ruby, but in actual we have 3 books. So we can still go ahead and do the recording. So it says that it is trying to record TF add books to the cart into the same file. If you want, you can continue in the same file, or else you can click on cancel and create new files, etc. Okay, for this demo purpose, I'll be using the same file for rest of the functions. Okay, now I have to specify the input parameters for Java, Ruby, and Python. Click on add. Here my add feature is over, so I'm going to stop the test recording. It might have recorded incorrectly, so you can also edit the script if you want, and then extract this information as Java, Ruby. So Java and Ruby populated in the dropdown because we have defined it. The Python was not there, so it lets you to define your own variables here. Okay, click on save. So till now, if you have seen, we have just automated the flow. We haven't done any verification yet. Okay, so the testing comes into the picture when you verify or validate some of the things from the UI. And if this is a manual test case, you would enter 321 and verify that the total becomes 1650, and you can mark that particular test as passed, right? But in automation, we have to deliberately tell the script that, okay, this is the place which I want to put an assert on. Okay, so in this verified total, we will see how easily we can put the assertion. Okay, so when you do control and hover your mouse over to any element, right, it shows how that element is being identified. So it is being identified as button add, similarly clear, logout. And if I do control mouse over on this, it says text box total. Okay, and the value of the total is 1650. You can click on assert. So Sahi will give you the sample assertions that you can apply on the text box total, so you can check for the visibility, existence, and equality. So here I'm more concerned about the visibility and the quality part, so I'll highlight those two statements, click on append, and stop the script. Oh, sorry, stop the function recording, and I can extract this total as total, right, and save it. Now at the end, we just need to do a logout. So I'm going to click on logout, stop the script, and the logout doesn't have any argument to be extracted, so it is not showing up anything. You can click on save, and this will be over. So now you can see that the browser got refreshed, and all the functions or all the keywords that we have put in previously were in red. Now it has been converted to black, and whatever the steps that we have performed, like login with username test and password was secret, but it is encrypted, adding the books Java 3 to Ruby 2 Python 1, verifying the total, and all the keywords are stored into functions library. So you control click on it, and basically it will open up the all the functions definitions. Okay, so let's run the test and see what happens. Now to run the test, I'll choose playback. Choose any browser you want. So the same script would across all the browsers, and click on run. So it will open up the browser. A browser need not to be in focus to be able to run the test. I just kept it so that you can see it running. Okay, I think it has completed the execution. Okay, so now once you click on the logs, right, it takes you to this page wherein all the functions that you have written, it will be green or red based on the status of the functions. Now if you click on it, it will tell you, okay, as a login, it has performed entering the username, password. You can also convert it to English so that it is easier for non-programmers to read it. So this kind of a logs will help at each and every level of your organization, be it a developer or the managers, and all the assert statement that you have put in, those will be in green or red based on the status of that particular statement. Okay, so now everything got passed, so it is in green. If some of the tests has failed, it will come in red, and it will automatically take the screenshots as well. Okay, so I'm going to quickly fail the test and show you what happens when the script fails. So ideally the application would change, and it will throw some error, but now I'm deliberately changing the application, the output data, to introduce the failure. Okay,
I like the reporting feature as well. Very simple and intuitive as well.
thank you. So I think the test has failed, and if you click on the logs, it will update the status as failure. So you can see that now it is in red. So all the functions that we have created, those are in green because those of all have passed. The assert statement has failed, and inside that also the text box total visibility check was passed because the text box total was visible. However, the equality check has failed because we have deliberately given the wrong information, and I think due to the so this is not the way the screen should come up. It basically captures the proper screenshot. Due to the Zoom meeting, I think the screen capturing is not done correctly, but ideally the screenshot would have just the page and not the browser specific things.
Okay, no, this looks excellent, Prateek. It looks like developers with or maybe test engineers having very little experience in coding, whatever I saw in front of my eyes, I think they can quickly spin off the automation smoothly. So one thing that I wanted to also understand, how does it fit to the continuous testing setup? Let's say I want to execute, let's say 100 test cases that are created using Sahi. So how do I kind of schedule that through Jenkins, through ALM, or any other test management tool? Can you talk to that a little bit?
Yes. So once you create scripts like this, right? So you'll not have one script which will do all the automation for you. Okay, so you would be essentially be creating some data driven suites. Okay, so this is one example of such script. So it is collection of all such script which we have created, and then you will create the end target based on your requirements. Okay, so here you can specify the tags and all, and now you click on playback, and the integration happens through AND. Okay, so any tool which support AND, we have a default integration. Okay, so the tools like Jenkins, TeamCity, Bamboo, TFS, right, they all provide invoking the test through AND. Okay, so if any tool has the AND invocation, we can directly integrate, and the reports can also be pushed back to the external tools like Jenkins. Okay, so we can export the reports. Okay, so these are the offline reports which we can export in terms of HTML or JUnit, right? And then the tool will pick up from that location, and the reports can be seen on the external tools as well. So major integration happens through and or the batch invocation or the REST APIs as well.
So you can trigger it from any continuous integration system, Vikram. And the first version of Sahi, which was written in 2005, already had ability to be integrated with the continuous integration system. Okay, and that is the primary purpose of having all this automation. And our customers run thousands of scripts as a suite. Okay, and when they actually these are all triggered either by Jenkins. Most of them they trigger it overnight via Jenkins target job. And what they do is for our execution, right, we actually execute it as a master and worker nodes. So you can actually you point it to a master saying that I want to execute these 1,000 scripts, and then that actually distributes it across to multiple other distributed nodes. Then it will execute on all of that, then collect back all the reports and give you one report at the end. And what happens is when the tester comes in the morning, right, they may have seen that okay, out of these 1,000, let's say 50 failed. Okay, now in that also there is a way to sometimes what happens is because of parallel playback and how the application is, there may be some way because of which the test may have failed. So what normally people do is like when a suite of scripts executes in Sahi Pro, it also, when anything that fails, it is added to a failed script suite. Okay, and what happens is we suggest that you actually trigger that failed script suite again, but not in parallel but sequentially. Okay, so that actually helps you to figure out whether there are any just race condition based problems, or like it will work correctly. So after that, whatever is left, right, let's say like 50 are still failing. Now you have a suite report that actually tells you that okay, these are out of 1050 failed, and in these 50 they all like actually have like all point to this particular, or like 20 of them point to this particular line in this particular file because of which it is failing. So it can pinpoint that hey, all of this is failing because like one particular element has changed in your application, and because of that, like 20 different failures are happening. So it can actually point that out to you as a suite analysis. So this saves a tremendous amount of time for the tester when he sees it, oh, 50 errors, but then he comes in and sees, hey, there are 4 places where I need to change. And then they go in and like, go to the object repository and change the element, like whatever it is. Quite possible that, like it would have, if your auto heal was on, like it may have passed, but, or like, even then if it failed, you just go in into that object repository and change that. We didn't show you the object repository part of that, but there is an easy way of extracting out the elements into what is called an accessor repository, and then be able to just go in there and change it. Okay, so those are other things. So it is built for a massive execution of like thousands of test cases, right? So
got it. That's so nice. And Pratik, would you like to show whatever Narayan just explained? Can we like see that object repository where we can speed up the maintenance process through reusability? I think.
Yes. Yeah, so once you open the functions library, right, all the objects are stored into the statement itself, right? So either you can create it afterwards, or you can record the script itself with the AR on. Okay, so now we have recorded the script without the AR. The Sahi Pro lets you to create the AR after the script as well. Okay, so here you have to specify the file name. So I will say TAF books demo. Okay, so if I click on proceed, so it will create, it would have created the AR. Okay, so now if you come back to the functions lib, all have been replaced with the variables. Okay, and if you control click on any of these things, you can see that this is being defined in this particular file with the value of this. Okay, now suppose if the Textbox user was changed to username, you just need to click on user and you update it here, and it will automatically be updated in the actual file. So you no need to go to the place where it is. Okay, and if the Textbox user was used in 10 to 20 different places, since it's just the reference variable, it will automatically fix it wherever it was used. So with one change, it will fix all the 20-30 scripts which were failing earlier.
Got it.
See, one thing you did not see is the recorder itself. So recorder you saw, but like there is an object identification. He did a control hover to actually identify an element, right? For the for figuring out the total. So that control hover to actually identify elements is also quite powerful. What you can identify an element by is quite configurable, or like there are lots of options for you to choose from. Also, you can pass in regular expressions. If you don't want to like say full Java book 1, you could just say /Java/ and it will actually treat it as a regular expression to identify it. So there are very strong easy ways of object identification also, through which you can identify it and then copy it and put it into that object repository.
Got it. And one more question. Like, is Sahi Pro optimized for any of the technologies, or it is like completely compatible with any web application, any mobile application, or any API kind of interfaces?
See, okay, if you talk about like the stability and the longevity of the technologies that it has worked on, browsers are the thing that it has been a staple on. Okay, so it is definitely like very, very solid on the browsers. Okay, the mechanism by which we identify elements is pretty much the same. We try to grab the object hierarchy in some way and then run our different simple functions to actually identify elements from that hierarchy. Okay, so all these web, mobile, desktop, all of them give you hierarchies from which you can actually extract them. There are some other things that we introduce as in like we handle, which is synchronization. We automatically do weights. We don't have to add any explicit weights in Sahi's code. So you wouldn't see any weights in Sahi's code except for like very, very specific cases. So that is another thing that like we have optimized across these different technologies. So as of today, like it's pretty much at par across the technologies. But definitely I would say that, we have an edge on browsers. But if you say, okay, is it only for like, a React based application, or is it only for a Vue.js based application or a vanilla JavaScript? It doesn't matter to. Okay. We hook into the JavaScript DOM and we are able to figure out, and we could actually do shadow DOMs and other things like way back, like almost like 7-8 years back. So as soon as it came out, we could actually handle all those things. So we have done a good job of like, basically being able to identify different elements.
Got it. So it's not like, it will work differently for SaaS based, like let's say Salesforce or SAPs or, similar ERPs or things like that. So it is more like, focusing on the browsers, right?
Correct. It's agnostic of what your application does.
Right.
So,
right. That was a great session. Anything else, Pratik, you would like to showcase?
One
feature? Yeah.
So there are quite a few silent features which may not be able to show it right up front, but one of the primary thing I would like to show is like, so we have tested this application with this set of test data, right? So not always you would like to test your application with same set of test data, right? So what you can quickly do here is you need to identify the thing which you want to do a data drive of. Like, so I want to pass in a different set of test data to Java, Ruby, Python and total, and see how my application performs. Okay, so you highlight those two row of data and then do say data drive. And here, if you have the CSV created already, you can pump it, or else you can create new files. So I would say TAF books, and I can say data. Okay. So you can see that it has added one more column, say data, and if you control click on it, it will create the CSV file. Okay, so the file can be CSV, Excel, or it can also read the data from the database as well. Okay, so here you can specify more combination of test data. So I will quickly add few rows of data. Here I want to do some negative testing also. So if I enter non-integer numbers, the total should be 0. If I enter some negative numbers, then also the total should be 0, something like that, right? And now if I again run the same test, so here you saw that the file got created automatically, the repeat end came automatically, and you don't have to write the code to basically do all these things. So you just fill up the wizard, and Sahi Pro will automatically create and loop it according to the number of rows you have in your script in your CSV file.
Right.
So you will see that.
So the test data is completely, separated from your. You don't have any script, but behind the scene it is completely separate, so that you can have many variations in the data to test the functionalities correctly, precisely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it has ran around 3-5 rows of data, out of which the first one got failed.
Yeah.
Right, and rest of the other things went as per the requirement.
Yep. That's really cool. That's a cool feature.
So the BDTA has helped us to create the script which takes little lesser time. Our playback, due to the way we identify the elements, are rock solid. And with this, the suite analysis, the analysis part of the suite results has also reduced. So the focus is on the testing. Okay, not this one. So this was the one. So out of, let's say, out of few hundred of the test, a few steps fail for this particular reason. Although it shows 3 failures, but if you fix this, it will automatically fix the rest of the other things. So the fixing and rerun becomes very easy, and it will save a lot of time for the end customers.
So I think that was a great demo, Pratik. Thank you so much for taking us through, how to get started with Sahi Pro and some of the cool features of Sahi Pro, how it is helping in saving time and quickly building automation, also optimizing your maintenance effort, and how we can, create our execution setup using different plugins of different tools. So thank you so much, Pratik, for that. I'm sure our followers of Test Automation Forum would definitely find that informative. And Narayan, I really appreciate you taking time joining us as part of this, knowledge sharing session, you can say. So I really
Grateful
appreciate.
for the opportunity.
Thank you, Narayan.
Thank you.
So, gentlemen, thank you again, and we'll talk with you soon.